Namaskar, and welcome to your UPSC News Analysis for the 2nd of May, 2025.
Hello.
In this session, we'll be dissecting the most crucial current affairs, clarifying fundamental ideas, and pinpointing aspects relevant to your mains examination, all viewed through an Indian perspective.
Absolutely. Ready to dive in.
Great. Let's start with something big on the economic front. India's goods and services tax, GST collection, it's hit a record high.
Indeed, it has.
Okay.
A very noteworthy development. We're looking at 2.37 lakh crore for April 2025.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a strong 12.6% increase compared to the same time last year.
And how does that compare to recent months? Is this a sudden spike or part of a trend?
Well, it seems like sustained momentum. If you look back, it's up from 2.00 lakh crore in April of 2024.
Okay.
1.96 lakh crore just last month in March 2025. So definitely an upward curve.
That's a clear sign of positive economic movement. Can we break down where that money's coming from?
Sure. So about 1.9 lakh crore is from domestic transactions. That's up 10.7%.
Healthy growth there.
And then you have 46,913 crore coming from imports, which actually saw a bigger jump, 20.8%.
Interesting. So both domestic activity and trade are contributing significantly.
Precisely. And it's also important to look at the net figure, after refunds.
Right. Refunds are always a factor.
They processed about 27,341 crore in refunds. That's up quite a bit, too, 48.3%.
So the net collection.
Comes out to 2.09 lakh crore. Still a solid increase, 9.1% year on year.
And is this growth concentrated somewhere or is it widespread?
That's what's quite telling, actually. There's pretty uniform growth across the major states, sort of in the 11 to 16% range.
Okay, so not just one or two regions pulling the weight.
Exactly. It suggests a broad-based economic recovery, which is, quite positive for the nation's overall economic health.
That really does paint a promising picture.
Yeah.
What do you think are the key factors driving this really impressive performance?
Well, it seems like several government initiatives are paying off. Proactive refund processing helps businesses with working capital.
Makes sense.
And then there's the tech side, e-invoicing, the e-way bill system. They're becoming more sophisticated.
Right, tightening compliance.
Definitely. Plus, they're using AI for monitoring now, and, the GST Council keeps making revisions, clarifications.
Streamlining things.
Yeah, and just the overall push towards digitization. It helps transparency, reduces evasion.
Okay. For our listeners prepping for the prelims exam, what are the absolute must-know GST facts?
Right, the basics. Key date, implementation, July 1st, 2017.
Got it.
Constitutional basis, the 101st Amendment Act, 2016.
Crucial.
The decision-making body is the GST Council under Article 279A.
Okay.
Remember, it's a dual structure center and states both levy it. And may you just recall the previous high was April 2024. Helps put this new record in context.
Excellent summary. Now let's shift focus a bit towards the mains exam. What are the bigger issues, the impacts we should be analyzing around these record collections?
Okay, mains perspective. There are definitely a few angles. Challenges first. Compliance burden, especially for MSMEs, it's still a concern.
Right, smaller businesses can struggle.
And while refunds are faster, delays can still happen, hitting those smaller players harder. Plus, the old chestnut, center state revenue sharing, those disputes haven't completely gone away.
Okay, those are the challenges. What about the impacts, the positives?
Well, clearly, it signals economic revival. Higher consumption, manufacturing boost. That's the big one.
Good for the economy overall.
From a governance angle, it shows better tax buoyancy, stronger fiscal administration. The government has more revenue muscle.
And socially.
More revenue means potentially more scope for welfare spending, social development programs.
Okay, so looking ahead then, what steps could make the GST system even stronger, more effective?
Good question. Rationalizing the tax slabs is often discussed, making it simpler, less ambiguous.
Yeah, fewer slabs maybe.
Targeted support for MSMEs, helping them comply more easily. That's essential.
Capacity building.
Exactly. And ensuring timely, transparent revenue settlements between the center and states. That's key for, cooperative federalism.
Right, keep that relationship smooth.
Continued digital integration, using AI even more to catch evasion. And finally, we need to keep an eye on the global economy. A slowdown elsewhere could impact our collections, so we need to be ready to adjust.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears now. Prime Minister Modi recently talked about the orange economy at the Waves 2025 summit in Mumbai. Can you unpack that term for us? What exactly is the orange economy?
Sure. The orange economy, or you might hear it called the creative economy. It basically covers all the sectors where value comes from creativity, culture, intellectual property.
So like movies, Music?
Exactly. Film, music, design, arts, media, publishing, advertising, content creation in general. It's about economic growth driven by, well, ideas and culture.
And it's seen as a driver for jobs and soft power, too, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's a big source of employment, and it really shapes how a country is perceived globally. It's knowledge-based, culturally driven growth.
In this World Audiovisual and Entertainment Summit, WAVES 2025 seems like a major platform for this in India.
Definitely. It's a big global forum for the media and entertainment world. PM Modi used it to really push India as a potential global hub for content creation.
The whole create in India, create for the world idea.
Precisely that. Emphasizing respect for all cultures, but also the global appeal of Indian stories and entertainment.
Who was there? Was it a big international event?
Oh, yeah. Delegates from over 90 countries and big names from Indian entertainment and business, Rajinikanth, Mukesh Ambani, Shantanu Narayan from Adobe.
Wow, quite the lineup.
And they announced the Waves Awards, too, recognizing how much Indian content is being watched internationally now.
Sounds like there's a real government push behind this sector.
Yes, very much so. The Create in India initiative is key, trying to make India a global creative production house, like we did with IT services.
Right.
The Digital India mission provides the infrastructure backbone.
Makes sense.
And there are specific incentives for film, for OTT platforms.
Yeah.
Remember that AVGC promotion task force?
Yes. Animation, visual effects, gaming, comics.
That's the one. Plus, efforts to improve ease of doing business in media, facilitating co-productions, using cultural content for diplomacy. It's a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, prelims focus again. What are the key takeaways about the Orange Economy and WAVES 2025 for aspirants?
All right, prelims points. Orange economy equals creative economy. WAVES 2025 was in Mumbai. 90-plus countries attended. Note the WAVES Awards.
Taught it.
Mukesh Ambani's projection Indian entertainment industry potentially growing from around $28 million to $100 million. Big jump.
Huge potential.
Key speakers, Rajinikanth, Narayan, Ambani, M. Keeravani, and maybe Adobe's goal aiming to skill up 2 crore students and 5 lakh teachers with creative tools.
Useful details. Now, thinking about mains again, what are the big challenges and, conversely, the opportunities with India's growing orange economy?
Okay, mains challenges. IP protection and piracy are still massive issues in India.
Always a problem.
Ethical concerns around content sensitivities, misinformation that needs careful handling. The digital divide is real. Not everyone has access to the tools or infrastructure. Regional creative sectors often feel underdeveloped.
Right? It's not just Bollywood.
And the risk of monopolization by big tech platforms controlling distribution. That's another factor.
Okay, those are hurdles. What about the upside, the opportunities?
Huge potential for jobs, attracting investment, both domestic and foreign.
Economic boost.
Enhancing cultural expression, promoting diverse voices, strengthening India's soft power, boosting skills-based education, and it forces us to develop adaptive regulatory frameworks.
Are there specific ethical or governance aspects we should be particularly aware of here?
Definitely. The PM mentioned responsibility creators need to be mindful of diverse sensitivities.
Avoiding offense.
And actively avoiding cultural homogenization.
Yeah.
We need to preserve India's incredible diversity.
Right.
Plus, the whole issue of algorithms and platform influence on what gets seen, that raises questions about fairness, bias, freedom of expression.
Complex issues. So looking forward, what's the best way to nurture this orange economy? What's the way forward?
Strategic investment in creative education, right from schools up to specialized training.
Building the talent pipeline.
Establishing creative incubators, maybe outside the big cities too, to foster local talent.
Decentralizing it.
Strengthening IP laws, making legal support accessible for creators, public-private partnerships for co-productions, market access, training.
Collaboration is
Promoting ethical content creation, maybe through media literacy programs, and really leveraging the diaspora and OTT platforms to reach a global audience.
Sounds like a solid plan. Okay, let's shift focus to the international stage now. There's news about a U.S.-Ukraine deal related to rare earth minerals. What's the core of this agreement?
Yes, this is quite significant geopolitically. The U.S. and Ukraine have signed a strategic mineral access agreement. It involves setting up something called the United States-Ukraine Reinvestment Fund.
And what does that mean in practical terms?
Essentially, it gives the U.S. better access to Ukraine's reserves of critical rare earths. We're talking lithium, titanium, graphite, minerals vital for modern tech.
Why now? Given everything happening with Ukraine, what's the timing about?
Several things are likely at play. The ongoing conflict really highlights the need for secure, diversified supply chains for critical resources.
True, the war exposed vulnerabilities.
There have also been some concerns, about future levels of U.S. support for Ukraine. This deal could be seen as a signal of long-term U.S. commitment to Ukraine's economy.
A different kind of support, beyond just military aid.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, the U.S. is actively trying to reduce its dependence on China for rare earths. China dominates the global market, especially processing.
Right, that dependence is a strategic concern. Are there other U.S. initiatives tackling this?
Oh, yes. The U.S. government has been working on this for a while. Recent National Defense Authorization Acts, NDAA, focus on reducing foreign dependence. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act also have provisions, incentives for domestic mining, processing, recycling, and sourcing from allies.
So, a multi-pronged strategy.
And Ukraine itself is aligning with EU standards through the EU Critical Raw Materials Alliance. This U.S. deal also has the potential maybe to help fund Ukraine's reconstruction efforts through investment in its resources.
Got it. For prelims prep, what are the key facts to remember about rare earths in this deal?
Okay, prelims. Rare earths are a group of 17 elements crucial for tech, energy, defense.
The elements themselves.
Ukraine has significant deposits, lithium, titanium, graphite, others. The mechanism is the U.S.-Ukraine Reinvestment Fund.
A fun name.
Geopolitically, the main drivers are countering China's dominance and showing long-term commitment to Ukraine.
Okay. Now for mains, what are the major issues and impacts surrounding this deal?
Maine's perspective. The big issue is that massive dependency on China for processing over 80% globally. That's the strategic vulnerability this tries to address.
Right.
Then there are questions about resource diplomacy. Could this be seen as exploitative given Ukraine's situation?
A valid concern.
For Ukraine, ensuring transparency and making sure the benefits actually reach the local communities and the national economy is vital for sovereignty.
Avoiding resource curse issues.
Economically, it could boost U.S. industry and help Ukraine's economy via investment. Strategically, it shores up Western commitment and secures materials for U.S. defense and tech.
What about the ethical or governance side of things?
Absolutely critical. Balancing aid with responsible resource extraction. Need transparent mechanisms to prevent corruption, ensure benefits are shared.
Right.
And environmental concerns. Rare earth mining can be messy, so adopting strict sustainable mining practices, ESG criteria, is crucial.
ESG, environmental, social, governance. Important. So how can we ensure deals like this are actually beneficial and sustainable?
Multilateral oversight could help international frameworks to ensure fair terms.
Not just bilateral pressure.
Implementing and enforcing green mining standards, those ESG criteria we mentioned. Supporting Ukrainian sovereignty, making sure the terms are truly mutually beneficial.
Respecting their interests.
And continuing strategic diversification. Encouraging other countries, maybe India, to explore similar partnerships to create a more balanced global market.
Makes sense. Okay, let's move to another important area. U.S. support for India against terror, especially after the Pahalgam attack. What's the latest there?
Yes, following that tragic attack in Pahalgam, the U.S. came out strongly, reaffirming support for India's right to defend itself.
Who conveyed this message?
It was in a call between the U.S. Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and India's Defense Minister, Rajnath Singh.
Okay, direct communication.
Also, EAM Jaishankar spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They discussed de-escalation and the need for dialogue between India and Pakistan, too.
A two-pronged message, then. Support for self-defense, but also advocating dialogue.
Seems so. And India, for its part, reiterated concerns about Pakistan's role. Minister Singh mentioned its history of funding and training terror groups.
That's a long-standing Indian position. What about those naval drills in the Arabian Sea that seem to happen around the same time?
Yes. Concurrently, both Indian and Pakistani navies held exercises there. Given the timing and the heightened tensions post-Pahalgam, it naturally fueled speculation about potential Indian responses.
Understandable. And wasn't there a statement from former President Trump as well?
There was. He condemned the attack and offered full support to PM Modi in bringing the perpetrators to justice.
So broad condemnation from the U.S. political spectrum.
Right.
What diplomatic efforts is India undertaking more broadly against cross-border terrorism?
India consistently raises Pakistan's links to terror groups at global forums, UN Security Council, FATF, places like that.
Keeping the pressure on.
And leveraging partnerships with the U.S., France, countries in the Middle East, building international support for counterterrorism and pressuring states that sponsor it.
Can you outline the specific India-U.S. counterterrorism cooperation mechanisms? What does that partnership look like in practice?
It's been growing steadily. There's the Homeland Security Dialogue, regular intelligence sharing on threats.
Intel sharing is key.
Joint military exercises often include counterterrorism components, and they've cooperated on listing terror outfits like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba under international sanctions.
So concrete cooperation and India's own military posture in response to these kinds of attacks.
Generally, India maintains high readiness, routine missile and naval drills signal capability. Increased vigilance along the Lasi is standard practice after incidents.
And we have seen direct action in the past.
Yes, the 2016 surgical strikes after Uri and the 2019 Balakot airstrike after Pulwama are precedents showing a willingness to respond militarily to major provocations.
Okay, for prelims, what are the key locations, officials, and relevant groups to note here?
Prelims points. Location Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir. Remember the NOTAM, Notice to Airmen in the Arabian Sea, related to the drills. Key officials. U.S. Hegseth, Defense, Rubio State, Indi Rajnath Singh Defense, Jay Shankar, EAM.
Names to know.
Relevant groups mechanisms, FATF, Financial Action Task Force, the Quad, and the UN Security Council's 12th Code 67 sanctions list for terrorists.
Good list. Now for mains analysis. What are the most pressing issues and impacts related to cross-border terrorism and the international response?
Mains issues. Obviously, the core challenge is cross-border terrorism itself, the security threat, the impact on vulnerable regions.
Persist despite efforts.
Pakistan's denial complicates things diplomatically. Holding actors accountable is tough.
Right.
India always faces that tricky balance, crafting a military response versus managing diplomatic pressures for restraint.
The balancing act.
And the vulnerability of civilians near the Lasi is a constant, tragic issue.
What about the impacts?
Diplomatically, strong international support boosts India's standing. Security-wise, it means constant military readiness. Strategically, it strengthens the India-U.S. counter-terror axis. And politically, it's often a central theme in domestic discourse.
Are there specific ethical or governance considerations in India's counterterrorism approach?
Yes, definitely. The right to self-defense needs to be exercised proportionally, minimizing harm to civilians. That's crucial under international law.
Proportionality.
Fact-based diplomacy is vital to counter misinformation. And there are always ethical debates around preemptive actions and attributing responsibility.
Complex ethical terrain.
So what's a comprehensive way forward for India in dealing with this ongoing challenge?
Strengthening multilateral forums, pushing for effective sanctions, maybe that elusive comprehensive convention on international terrorism at the UN.
To CCIT, yeah.
Maintaining credible strategic deterrence, a mix of readiness and diplomacy. Fostering people-to-people initiatives where possible, maybe long-term that helps.
Building bridges.
Enhancing border management, more tech, better intelligence. And crucially, working with partners to cut off terror financing and counter online radicalization. It's a multifaceted fight. Indeed it is. Now let's turn to a very different and deeply distressing situation. The communal tension reported in Nainital after the alleged rape of a minor. What's the latest there?
Yes, it's a very disturbing situation. Nainital has seen significant communal tension following the alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl.
When did this happen?
The incident itself apparently occurred on April 12th, but the FIR was lodged later on April 30th. An arrest was made, identifying the accused as Usman.
And the tension escalated after the arrest.
Yes, on May 1st, there was mob violence. Vandalism occurred, creating a lot of fear among locals and tourists.
That's terrible. What's the response been?
Heavy police deployment, naturally. They've initiated peace marches, and there are appeals to protect Nainital's image given its reliance on tourism.
Oh, right. Tourism is vital there.
The National Commission for Women, NCW, strongly condemned the act and urged the Uttarakhand DGP to take strict action. And sadly, reports indicate tourists are leaving or canceling bookings.
That economic impact is immediate. What specific actions have the authorities taken?
Well, the legal process started with the FIR under the IPC and, importantly, the POCSO Act.
Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses Act.
Exactly. That led to the arrest. The district magistrate has ordered counseling for the minor victim.
Essential support.
Police deployment and peace marches are the on-ground measures. The NCW issued a notice seeking a report. And state-level appeals for calm are trying to manage the fallout, especially for tourism.
Okay. For prelims, what are the key legal provisions and bodies relevant here?
Key things to know: POCSO Act, 2012 specific framework for child sexual abuse cases. Relevant IPC sections for rape, assault, maybe 153A for promoting enmity.
Right, the communal angle.
The National Commission for Women, NCW, set up by the NCW Act 1990, the role of the district magistrate in maintaining law and order. And, contextually, the importance of tourism to Nain Atoll's economy.
Got it. Now, looking at this from a Maine's perspective, what are the critical underlying issues and the broader societal impacts this incident highlights?
This really throws the issue of communal polarization into sharp relief. How a criminal act by an individual can be tragically twisted to inflame tensions against an entire community.
Dangerous pattern.
The subsequent mob violence completely undermines the rule of law.
Vigilantism is never the answer.
And often, the focus shifts to the accused's identity, overshadowing the urgent need for justice and support for the victim.
But the victim gets lost in the noise.
Plus, the economic impact, as we see in Nain Atoll, hitting tourism-dependent livelihoods hard. Socially, it deepens mistrust, widens communal divides, and is incredibly traumatic for the victim and family. Governance-wise, it puts immense pressure on law enforcement, both to solve the crime and prevent communal flare-ups.
What about the specific ethical considerations in handling such sensitive situations?
Paramount is upholding the victim's dignity and rights. Simultaneously, actively preventing the spread of communal hatred based on one person's alleged actions.
Individual responsibility, not collective blame.
Exactly. Emphasize that strongly. It's also ethically crucial to balance public outrage with due process, ensuring the response doesn't worsen divisions.
A very fine line to walk.
Yeah.
What proactive and reactive measures could be effective here and maybe prevent future occurrences?
Swift, impartial judicial action under POCSO with sensitive victim support is non-negotiable.
Justice for the child first.
Community outreach administration, religious leaders, civil society working together to foster dialogue, prevent polarization.
Building bridges.
Strict action against rioters and those inciting hatred, Section 153A of the IPC is relevant there. Measures to protect the tourism sector, reassure visitors.
Mitigating the economic damage.
And responsible discourse from media and public figures is vital. Avoid inflammatory rhetoric.
This situation also seems like a significant case study for aspiring civil servants, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights that complex challenge, balancing legal action, victim empathy, and maintaining social harmony. A civil servant's duty is to uphold the law and prevent communalization of crime. Ensure fair prosecution, provide comprehensive victim support, act firmly against insiders, build public trust through transparency, and implement proactive peace-building measures. It's a test of navigating intense pressure while sticking to principles.
A very tough test. Okay, let's move to another sociopolitical issue. The Virashaiva Lingayat community reportedly seeking a separate religion code in the census. What's the background here?
Right. The Akhila Partha Virashaiva Mahasabha is planning to petition the center for the separate code in the next census. It's not a new demand, actually.
It's come up before.
Oh, yes. It surfaced notably before the 2018 Karnataka elections and in earlier census periods, too. It's been a long-standing aspiration for sections of the community.
Is the community united on this?
That's where it gets complicated. There are internal differences. The Jagataka Lingayat Mahasabha wants a code just labeled Lingayat. The Virashaiva Mahasabha prefers Virashaiva Lingayat.
So not full agreement on the name itself. What about their population size? It's significant in Karnataka, right?
Yes, politically influential. Population estimates vary, though. A 2015 Karnataka survey put them around 11%. The Mahasabha claims higher, maybe 18–22%. They have a presence in neighboring states, too.
What's the government's current practice for religious classification in the census?
The Census Act of 1948 governs it. In the 2011 census, there were codes for only 6 major religions. Everyone else fell under Other Religions and Persuasions, or ORP.
So no separate code for them currently?
Correct. Past petitions haven't led to a separate classification yet. You might also recall the Justice Nagamahan Das Committee in Karnataka recommended minority status for Lingayats, but that wasn't implemented nationally.
Okay. For prelims, what are the key names, laws, reports to know?
Remember Basavana, the 12th century reformer, foundational figure for Lingayatism, the Census Act, 1948.
Got it.
In Karnataka, they're currently under Category 3B of the OBC list for reservation purposes.
Okay.
The 2015 Kantharaj report, that Karnataka survey, is relevant for population estimates. And just understand what a religious code means in the census context.
Right. Now, for Maines, what are the core issues and potential ramifications if a separate code is granted?
Maine's issues. First, That internal debate, Virashaiva versus Lingayat identity, complicates the demand.
The internal friction.
It raises fundamental questions about how a secular state like India defines and classifies religion.
Where do you draw the line?
Concerns about political motivations, vote bank politics influencing identity claims,
Always a factor in India.
and the legal administrative definition of religion or community isn't always clear-cut.
What about potential impacts if it happens?
Could affect eligibility for minority status, quotas. Administratively, it means restructuring census data. Culturally, it could strengthen identity or deepen internal divides. And it would impact policy on reservations, welfare, etc.
Are there specific ethical or governance considerations here?
Yes, the big one is balancing the community's right to assert identity with the state's secular principles.
Tricky balance.
Need to guard against misusing identity for political gain or creating more social divisions. Policy decisions need to be transparent, evidence-based, consultative, and equitable.
So what's a constructive way forward? How should this demand be handled?
Maybe an expert committee, historians, sociologists, legal experts to examine the claims impartially.
Objective review.
Developing clear, consistent criteria for recognizing religious codes based on doctrine, history, population size, a framework. Encouraging dialogue within the community to resolve those internal differences might help.
Internal consensus first.
Crucially, any decision must respect secularism, avoid political opportunism, prioritize social cohesion, and be transparent.
That transparency is key. This naturally leads to the deeper debate. Should Lingayatism be seen as a distinct religion from Hinduism? What are the arguments?
Okay, arguments for separation. Proponents stress Basavana's teachings in the 12th century were distinct, rejecting caste, Vedic authority, focusing on Ishtalinga worship.
A reform movement with unique tenets.
They point to unique scriptures, rituals, emphasis on equality. They also note other faiths historically linked to Hinduism are recognized separately, and a separate code gives better representation, helps policy.
Okay, what about the arguments against separation?
Critics point out many Lingayats still follow Hindu rituals, indicating overlap. The internal divisions, Virashaiva Lingayat, weaken the case for a single separate identity.
The lack of unity again.
Concerns about political motivation, potential for social fragmentation based on religion, and sublegal scholars urge constitutional caution about segmentation, plus potential policy complications with existing reservations, etc.
So, bringing it together, what's a balanced conclusion on this complex debate?
Well, Lingayat philosophy clearly has unique elements, but formal recognition as a separate religion is complex. It really needs broad community consensus, strong historical validation, and very careful consideration of constitutional principles. The state needs to be impartial, prioritize identity protection and cohesion, not political expediency.
A nuanced approach is needed. Finally, let's turn to a very poignant story. The appeal for peace from the wife of the Navy officer killed in the Pahalgam attack. What was her message?
Yes, incredibly powerful. Sement Hemanshi Narwal, wife of Lentin Vinay Narwal, martyred in Pahalgam, made a strong statement condemning hate directed at Muslims and Kashmiris after the attack.
That takes immense courage.
Absolutely. She explicitly urged for peace and justice, rejecting vengeance and collective blame. At a blood donation camp for her husband, she said, "We want peace and only peace."
A remarkable plea.
She also demanded martyr status for her husband and called for strict action against the attackers. The situation is just heartbreaking. They were newly married, honeymooning in Pahalgam because a visa for Switzerland was denied.
Just tragic. What are the official provisions for situations like this, martyr status protecting communities?
There are protocols for battle casualty or martyr status for personnel killed in action, especially in counter-terror ops. The Armed Forces Battle Casualties Welfare Fund provides support.
Financial and other support.
Officers killed fighting terrorists are usually considered for gallantry awards, like the Shaurya Chakra, plus compensation for the family.
And protection against backlash.
Constitutionally, Articles 15 and 16 prohibit discrimination based on religion origin. IPC Section 153A criminalizes promoting enmity between groups. Law enforcement and institutions have a duty to protect all communities, especially vulnerable ones like Kashmiri students who can face threats after such attacks.
Okay. For prelims, what are the key constitutional articles, IPC sections, and related terms?
Prelims points, Articles 15 and 16, non-discrimination, IPC Section 153A, promoting enmity. Understand battle casualty status.
Got it.
Note Elteet Narwal's posting, Southern Naval Command, Kochi, and the attack location, Halgam-Biceren Valley.
Details noted. Now, Maine's perspective. What critical societal issues and impacts does this tragedy and Simp Narwhal's response bring into focus?
It starkly highlights the danger of communal backlash after terror attacks, targeting specific communities like Kashmiris, which threatens social harmony.
A recurring danger.
It underscores the need for responsible media and public discourse, avoiding misinformation, incitement.
Media responsibility.
Inconsistencies sometimes arise in recognizing martyr status across forces, causing pain to families, and how narratives are framed balancing grief outrage with cohesion is crucial.
What are the broader impacts?
Socially, it risks deepening communal fault lines, but Simp Narwhal's appeal offers powerful moral leadership, empathy over hate. Recognizing sacrifice is vital for forces' morale, and continued terror backlash harms Kashmir's image, tourism, stability.
What about the ethical and governance considerations here?
Key ethical imperative: uphold rule of law, reject mob justice or collective punishment, protect the dignity of the bereaved, prevent exploitation of grief for divisive politics.
Respecting the family's pain.
Simp Narwhal's ethical leadership, choosing peace despite tragedy, is a powerful example. Good governance means ensuring justice and proactively addressing polarization, building community bridges.
So what concrete steps should be taken moving forward?
Officially recognize Simp Narwhal as a martyr, ensure prompt support to his family. That's basic.
First step.
Launch sustained national anti-hate campaigns, especially after attacks, to counter scapegoating.
Proactive messaging.
Strengthen security for vulnerable groups like Kashmiri students. Encourage responsible, sensitive media coverage. Avoid polarizing narratives.
Media ethics again.
And actively celebrate voices of peace, like Simp Narwhal's. Promote empathy, harmony in public discourse. Her message is incredibly important.
Absolutely. A powerful note to end on, highlighting the importance of peace and understanding, even in the face of tragedy.
Indeed.
Okay, that concludes our deep dive for today, the 2nd of May, 2025. We hope this analysis of current affairs, explanation of core concepts, and highlighting of Maine's relevant issues proves valuable for your UPSC preparation.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We did. Please do subscribe for daily updates and drop a comment to share your thoughts or insights. We'd love to hear from you.
Your feedback is always welcome.
And remember, you can download the audio or transcript for your revision. Thank you.
Thank you.